welcome back to Throat Punch Monday with Len and Leah. We are really excited to introduce to you a very special guest, Linda Diaz, today. She is an Army veteran. Len, I love you for bringing all the Army veterans on. Yeah.
I'm gonna need to start bringing some Navy veterans here soon. Like, I'm getting outnumbered.
Well, that's just because there's more of us. Sorry. There's more of us. So, Linda has founded a nonprofit, Lauren's Law, and has been an advocate to help get this law passed through legislation at her local state. She's turned her anguish and sorrow from a very tragic loss into helping thousands of people today. We're going to get into that story in just a second. You can check out more information about that at www.laurenslaw.org, and that's LAURNLAW, excuse me, law. I'm trying to pronounce Lauren or say Lauren, and I can't even spell law, so now I'm all kinds of tongue-tied. Lauren's Law Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that advocates and provides support to youth suffering with mental illness. Our goals are to bring awareness to depression through education and resources by offering a safe environment for young people in crisis to share their voice and to be heard. So with that being said, we can tell that this is going to be a very heavy topic. I'm spitting all over I'm sorry. This is going to be a very heavy topic. Linda, thank you so much for coming with us today and sharing your story. And I'm just going to let you take it away and start where you'd like to start. So,
well, thank you, Len and Leah, for having me. It's a pleasure to be, a part of your podcast and sharing, all of the many things that we serve and that we do in our communities as not just veterans, but as parents and community members. Thank you for you actually pronounced Lauren's name correct. Thanks to Lauren Hill. A lot of people normally pronounce Lauren, but it is Lauren. Lauren was my 15-year-old daughter. I lost her 3 weeks after her 15th birthday to suicide. And, Lauren was my youngest child. I had my oldest when I was in the military. So I was a single mom. And, when I was raising L'Oreal and, being a single mom, I was, of course, a disciplinary, but I was also mom. I was mom and dad to my oldest. And I was always made acutely aware of children and the things that, we went through, because me, myself, I didn't have the greatest childhood, and, being in and out of foster homes and, just not having the greatest childhood. I was very conscious of my children. And of course, when you're in the military, we're so, aimed to please, and, being shipped out or TDY or, deployed, or it was difficult being a single mom. So I decided not to continue enlisting. And when I came out of the military, that's when I really learned, okay, well, I was missing a lot with my oldest daughter, and I wanted to make sure and be conscious. So, marrying when my oldest was 10, and then having my youngest, Lauren, here we go again. We try to make the most positive, decisions, as a parent, as, women and so on. But things kind of like didn't work out, and I ended up getting divorced. And of course, I'm going to be more conscious of, my youngest daughter. I already raised one daughter as a single parent. I wanted to try to make things, as comfortable as possible with my ex-husband, which was Lauren's father. But long story short, I found out he was a heroin addict. So I don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs or anything like that. So I'm not familiar with what it is to physically live in a house, with someone suffering from substance abuse or anything like that. So, these are learning experiences, and these are things that I saw were taking a toll on my daughter. And, it became, very, it became something that I really needed to focus on when Loren was younger, especially after, Loren's father, my ex-husband, attempted to kill us. And so even going through a divorce with all of these different things that were happening, all these traumatic events that were happening, I, took Loren to see a therapist, and the therapist, didn't tell me that, oh, well, you should really keep an eye on her. She could suffer from depression. And Loren was about 5 years old when that happened. And without the therapist actually, telling me anything, after, several weeks, Loren was already shy. Maybe she kind of, allowed the therapist to think that she was getting better. So the therapist said, oh, she's fine. She doesn't need any more therapy. Don't follow, no follow-up information. So, but because of my own childhood, I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to keep an eye on that. So I learned that Loren had become extremely shy, and I just kept an eye on that. When Loren complained about stomach aches, I'd take her to her pediatrician. When Loren would complain about headaches, I'd take her to her pediatrician. So everything that Loren was kind of complaining about as the years went on, especially with the things that were happening with her biological father, me having to move and kind of keep us, safe all the time. What Loren ended up doing was Loren really started to suffer with regards to whether or not I was going to make it home. If I was gone too long, she thought that maybe her father found me and killed me. So Loren, I started to see, things that were kind of, trending with regards to her behavior. So I would always make sure that I was conscious about it. Now, mind you, all of these different things that have been happening, the one thing that I did not know and that I was absolutely ignorant of was mental health. Had absolutely no clue whatsoever that all of these traumatic events that were happening in my daughter's life were increasing her, the depression that she was suffering with, alone and in silence. And I thought she was kind of suffering alone, but I'll come back to that. Just to kind of, you've already had a, little background with regards to Loren and some of the traumatic events that were kind of happening in her life. And in 2012, as a teenager, she's 14 years old. Loren was also starting to, explore with regards to her sexuality. Did I care? No. Did her sister care? No. I'm a tomboy. Her sister's a tomboy. It didn't matter to me how my girls dressed. And the only thing that ever mattered to me was that my kids were happy. Well, in the fall of 2012, someone had taken Loren's pictures, started texting and sending them to, to other people, and they started gossiping about Loren being gay. Well, Loren was not open with regards to, coming out, with regards to her sexuality in any which way or form. And no one was pressuring her in my family. And I say in my family, when I mean myself, my partner in life, at my oldest daughter, no, that was our family, and no one pressured her. It's not that we didn't care. It's just all we cared about was her happiness. So that wasn't something that was a topic of conversation, So it kind of got out of hand. By the time January came around, Loren had become, kind of withdrawn. I started noticing her grades were slipping. I tried to reach out to her school counselor, And long story short, school counselor never reached out, but then again, it really didn't matter because by February 15th, Loren attempted suicide. I had run out the house. She sent me on an errand. She asked me to go get her, some, monthly supplies as well as some food because she was hungry. And she was purposely keeping me out of the house. And so when I returned home on Friday, February the 15th, I found her. And, I had to do what I needed to do. So I had to cut her down, do CPR, dial 911. And she ended up being stabilized at Laurel Regional Hospital, where she was medevaced to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, where she passed away 12 hours later. So she passed away on February 16th. And, in the midst of all of this, it's, I'm not really having the time to truly grieve because, Loren's friends were calling, Loren's friends were coming to the house. And, these are like all types of friends. She's got friends whose parents were in the military. She's got friends whose parents were married and happily married. She had friends who were, single family homes or lived in a single parent home, friends who were being raised with caregivers because their parents were not physically taking care of them. So they were in the care of someone else who's caring for them. And, in attempting to try to, I guess to even fathom what my life is going to be like. My oldest daughter is in the Army and boot camp when we lost Loren. So my partner in life, he is reaching out to Red Cross, who was then reaching out to the Army, who was then reaching out to do what they can do to bring my daughter home out of boot camp without trying to tell her exactly what happened, to her sister, because they were very, very, very close. The three of us were very close. So, all of this is going on. These kids are reaching out. Now my daughter's back home and we're going through the service. And I have so many kids that are reaching out. They can't go to school. They can't focus on school. My daughter's, she's like, oh, I'm going to go back to boot camp. I'm going to finish boot camp. I'm going to do what I can. And the service is over for Loren, and everyone is going to start trying to, move on and, in the next phase of, however we are all going to start learning to deal with life and not having Loren be a part of it. And, my daughter puts on her uniform, she's going back to boot camp, and she has a breakdown. She can't even think. She's in her uniform. She can't think. It's not that she's blaming, the Army for what happened, but it was a trigger for her because she was in uniform when it happened. So my daughter, thank God that the Army found it gracious enough where they were able to give her a general discharge because she physically could not put on a uniform to go and finish her commitment after losing her sister. And then there were, my daughter's friends, some of them had parents that were going through every scenario. One of her friend's parents was being deported. Another friend's parent was being deployed. So now you have all of these, different events that are happening in these kids' lives after they lose Loren to suicide. And so one of the most important things that a lot of individuals don't realize is that there is such a thing called the ripple effect of suicide. So for every one person who is lost to suicide, there is a minimum of about 121 different people that are affected by that loss to suicide. And that's what I kind of started to notice was happening, but I didn't know it was the ripple effect. All I did was I noticed that I started reading my daughter's messages that were coming in on her Instagram account or on her cell phone. People were sending messages thinking that nobody was going to be able to see them. And I was starting to see all of these other kids who were, some of them were sending Loren suicide notes. They were like leaving her notes, even though she couldn't read it. They were leaving notes for her. They were thinking of suicide because they couldn't function, not because of Loren, but because of all of the risk factors that were going on in their life. So now they've, whatever's happening at home, whatever's happening in school, and then the next thing you know, this culture shock of Loren, who was like a confidant for so many other kids her age, she was their confidant. So all of these kids that were struggling no longer had Loren there to anchor them down. And that's kind of what started me on the road to Loren's Law, which was House Bill 947 that was passed in 2015. I was attempting to assist all of these kids. I couldn't really reach out to their parents. I couldn't go to the school. The only way that I could help these kids was by giving these kids a safe place to be able to, to release the negative energy that was causing them to, to continue into that dark hole of an abyss of depression. And they didn't know that they were suffering from depression. And it was just like Loren's death was just, another piece in the puzzle that was kind of like just, falling on top of them, and their lives were changing and they just couldn't find their way out of it. And, so in the many attempts that I had made to reach out to parents, to reach out to the schools, to reach out to, different adults to try to help all of these kids, I was getting the doors slammed in my face. Yeah, so I was like, just because your child killed herself, I had a lot of very negative comments. Just because your child killed herself doesn't mean my child wants to kill themselves. So it was like a lot of different negative things that were happening. I kind of got the exact same thing pretty much from like the schools, oh, we've got everything under control. We don't need your help. And so finally I ended up saying, what, somebody's got to help these kids. If nobody's going to pay attention to what these kids are going through, it's just going to make these kids want to leave by suicide more and more and more, because they feel irrelevant. They feel as though that their voices don't matter, that, they have, every adult in their life is basically telling them to shut up. And, you don't know what stress is. You have no idea what stress is, so these kids they were just suffering in silence. And no one stops to think that the risk factors in life, divorce, substance abuse, everything that these kids, everything that we do as adults can damage and cause trauma to our children. Even if we don't mean to at times, it does traumatize these kids. And if we don't give these kids the ability to be able to open up, the only thing they're going to end up doing is, if they live through their childhood and they live through those teenage years, they're just going to grow up, and whatever trauma they have been going through, trauma as an adult, if they get into a relationship and they break up, if they get a job, they lose their job, if they get a home and they lose their home, all of the events in life are only going to build up. Where if a child does not attempt, or they have suicidal thoughts but do not follow through with any plans to leave by suicide, then what ends up happening is everything builds up. And then the next thing you know, a lot of people like to say, oh, don't pay attention to that person, they're going through midlife crisis. No, well, if you think about it, it's about the midlife when people start really going through things again, so I just kind of realized, how do we help the future? We help the future by helping the kids. And if we can do something now to give children a voice and give them a foundation to be heard, and to allow them to express themselves without being criticized or being bullied or being ignored with regards to their very real feelings, then we can help the future. We can make sure that the future is better for everyone else. So I always say this, the children are our future. And I learned it a long time ago. Like I said, when I first got out of the military, I realized all of the things that made me feel bad as a parent, missing my daughter's birthdays, Christmas, holidays, and things like that. As a veteran, these are things that are very real. These are things that bothered me, but instead of bringing me down, I decided that I wanted to make that change. And I wanted to make that change, and I showed my daughter, this is what this is what I didn't do with you, and guess what, I'm going to do these with you now, and I'm going to make sure that the future is better for you. And thank goodness I was able to do it with my oldest. I thought I was kind of doing that with my youngest, but what can I say? I lost one.
So Linda, let me go ahead and kind of cut you off for a bit. Sorry. So you said that all the children, all Loren's friends were coming to you trying to get help, and you were asking the school for help to see what they can do, and they told you absolutely nothing else. There's nothing we can do, right?
Well,
and so
no, they didn't tell me there's nothing we can do. They said we don't need your help.
they said
We
that
know what we're doing. We know what we're doing.
because I think I know you were you said you were advocating to talk about it, right? Because kids are still people. Like, even though they're in high school, middle school, they still have a conscience. They're still thinking. So that's what you're saying, is that kids are still people. So once you got fed up with the system and them telling you, no, they got this, and they were not doing anything, your next step, you went to legislation. So
I did.
You did. Okay. So tell us about that process, about the legislation and what that entailed. Like, how did that help the community and the schools, and you get to where you're at for Loren's law to be passed?
So what ended up happening was, I did go to the schools. I went to the school counselors. I started going to the school administration. And this was multiple schools in multiple counties in Maryland. So we lived in one county, and Loren had friends that spread across about 4 or 5 different counties in the state of Maryland. And there are 24 counties in Maryland. So I went through different schools, different administrators. And when I couldn't get any help from them, then what I started to do was I started to go to the local or in the county school board of education. And I reached out to them, and I tried to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. These kids need help. The schools aren't doing anything. I named the administrators, and the president at that time of the Prince George's County School Board of Education, he responded to me. And he ended up sending a message to the school superintendent, and then down to, the schools. And long story short was, they were supposed to have like mental health awareness days and so on and so forth, but it really did not happen. And so when I, in the meantime, the bureaucracy of one school, and school superintendent was leaving, another school superintendent was coming in. then it became, I had to go through that process all over again. So it was like, oh, we'll give you a meeting. So when I finally went through the entire process again, I said, okay, I'll go through it again. Met with the new school superintendent. And when I met with the school superintendent, I started to explain to him that, the schools need more, more platforms, for kids to be able to have a safe space, to be able to actually, have youth groups or meeting groups or something so they can actually meet. And that school superintendent actually told me that that is not important to him. The only thing that was important to him at that time was violence in the schools. And when he said that, I said, well, I was like, if you're thinking about violence in the school, they kind of go hand in hand, mental health, school violence, bullying, violence, all of that, they kind of go hand in hand. And I just, disengaged. I thanked him for his time. And then I finally said, you know what, that's it. I took all of my emails, all of my correspondence, all text messages, videos, everything. I compressed all of that information into a zip drive. And then I finally decided to go to legislation, and I started to research all of the legislators in the state of Maryland from both the House and the Senate. And I had picked literally a handful of them. I sent them a long email and I said, attached is a zip drive. It's very compact. There's a lot of information on there. And the next thing you know, I get a message at like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm looking at my emails, and Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick is sending me a message going, yeah, can you call me right now? And I was like, it's 10 o'clock at night. Do you want me to call you in the morning? She was like, no, call me right now. And I called her, and she was like, she had gone through my emails. She had opened up all of the files, and she was just like, are you serious? Did all of this really happen? And I said, yes. So she decided to, we got to meet. Absolutely. She brought in Mary Lehman, who at that time was only a council member. She's now also a delegate at the House of Delegates in the state of Maryland now. But she said, I've got to bring in council member Mary Lehman. She had recently lost her brother to suicide, who was an adult. But the thing is that it's suicide. It's something that's very important to her. Let's kind of team up on this. And then this was in September of 2014 when I finally sent that message. So I would get correspondence back and forth. I knew that, that Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and her staff, as well as Councilmember Mary Lehman, they were literally going through, all of legislation, all school records, all school, policies and procedures and things like that. And they found that school counselors in the state of Maryland were never required to become certified in anything behavioral or mental health when it came to children in the school. So even though they were a school counselor, they never had any training. They never went and got any training besides their initial training to become a school counselor, and then that was it. So not all of them, but you're talking hundreds and hundreds of them, right, out of the 24 counties. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It wasn't required, and you would think like your work, and when kids are growing up, they're going through hormones, puberty changes, high school, and in Maryland, you talked about the diverse background that the kids had. They're gonna need people to talk to, someone who's qualified. How would a counselor help me if they're not even qualified or even know how to deal with my situation?
That is true, and that is true. And then with Loren's story, with me reaching out to her school counselor because I was concerned about Loren's grades. It took a lot for me to get this school counselor to even say, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Loren's she's in honors classes. Yes, I see her grades are slipping. I'll go ahead and call her down, but she never called Loren down. And then, you know, by that time, it didn't even matter because a couple of weeks, you know, 3 weeks later, Loren was gone. So, but that seemed to be the issue that was going across, because one of the many things that I submitted as far as my backup and my documentation were that the school counselors, the kids were making appointments with the school counselors, and the school counselors were either canceling the appointments or not making the appointments with the kids. There were teachers and school counselors, even with Loren, you know, the friends were crying, and, you know, they would be like, well, why are you crying? And the child would say, oh, well, you know, we miss Loren. And, you know, these adults were very harsh with these kids, and they would actually sit here and tell these kids, oh, everybody dies, you know, you should get over it by now. Loren's been gone a couple of weeks now, you know, you should be over it. And I'm like, who tells a child that? You know, I mean, Loren was only 15 for 3 weeks. Loren had friends who were 12 and 13, 14, up to 18 years old. So within a year and a half of me doing all of, you know, as much as I could to help kids and getting all these doors slammed in my face, in the meantime, one of Loren's friends had survived a suicide attempt at 14. Another one attempted suicide twice in a year after Loren passed away. And she was only 13 years old. You know, so I'm like, at this rate, I'm not going to get a child to live beyond the age of 14. You know, if, you know, I'm like, I can't, realistically speaking, I'm thinking, you know, I am living 23 hours a day crying because I'm missing my own child, but I have to spend that time that I'm not crying, you know, trying to help these other kids and bringing myself up to a point so that I can be there for these kids. And so by January of 2015, you know, the day before Loren's birthday, it would have been her 16th birthday, I got a phone call from Jocelyn Peña-Melnick's office stating that what's called the blueback of House Bill 947, which was called Loren's Law, had come back. So the blueback meaning that the law was, they had actually written the entire legislation. They had met with, you know, many different, you know, professionals to include the Maryland State Department of Education, and they drew up the legislation and they put in the legislation. And the blueback means, okay, now we're going to put it onto the floor. We're going to put it up for a hearing. You know, let's see if you can get any sponsors for the bill. And I was floored. I was floored when I got that message. And yeah, I ended up going in and meeting with them. And between January and February, before the first hearing, I was, you know, I felt horrible, because first off, I had to go into every one of these legislators' offices. So I went into all of the all the representatives for the House of Representatives, the House of Delegates, as well as all of the representatives for the Senate before both hearings even happened. And I told Loren's story, and, you know, just to get as many legislators as I could to sign that blueback to support the bill to actually be passed. And Senator Catherine Pugh, at that time, had done what's called a cross bill. So the cross bill was, you know, one was it was the same bill, one from the House, one from the Senate. So to get as much backing as we could for that one bill, get as many sponsors as we could, so that, you know, we can at least get them to pass. And the wonderful thing about it was that we ended up pretty much having a unanimous decision where everyone pretty much sponsored that bill. And you know, we had the hearings and everything, and by May of 2015, the governor had signed Loren's Law into legislation. So he had approved it. So from the time that the bill was actually dropped and the time that the bill was passed into law, it went relatively, quick. So a lot of people probably thought that it took a year and a half. That's actually not how long it took for that first bill. But in the process of getting that bill passed and now requiring that all school counselors have to have at least not a minimum of 1 credit with regards to behavioral and mental health awareness training. And they have to make sure that they get recertified in order to maintain the special title of a school counselor.
Right.
And so, yeah, so now like Loyola College and Goucher College, McDaniels College, Hood College, there are multiple universities now in the state of Maryland that are actually offering the courses in order to, assist the school counselors to maintain, their certifications for school counselor. And then that actually birthed the second part of Loren's law that ended up being passed in 2017. So in the middle of passing that, we realized, well, guess what? Even if the school counselors got this training, what about teachers? The school nurse, the secretary, volunteers and things like that. What if we require them to get at least an annual suicide prevention awareness training so that they can learn the signs, so that they can be able to see the signs in the kids? Because before a school counselor, is notified of differences in a child's grades or anything like that, the child in the class. So, if we have a child that comes to school and they're bright and perky and they say good morning every day, and then the next thing you know, they come in and you notice that their head is slouching, that they're not doing their homework, they're not doing their classwork, that they're going to sleep, in the middle of class. All of these different characteristics is something that's, happening with a child. It's not necessarily that they are depressed, suicidal, but the fact is that there's something traumatic or behavioral that's, happening in this child's life that is causing, their personality to change. And that's where the second bill for House Bill 920 came in, where now every year by December 1st, all school personnel have to have annual suicide prevention training. And they have to make sure that they submit that, the verification on that one. So pretty much everyone in the state of Maryland now in the education system is, they're getting, sensitivity training, behavioral health training, anti-bullying training. So it's the wonderful thing that has spread, through,
Amazing for the entire state of Maryland for that to happen. Because I know around 2014-15, around that time, wasn't there like riots there, police riots in Maryland? I remember that.
There was a lot going on.
There was a lot going on around that time. So it's huge when you have that first line resource is your teacher, because you see them every day and you're with them, most of the day, and your parents at work. You know what I mean? And so, and all that stuff is happening around you, and not to mention all the other extra stuff. So I know you said that this passed from Maryland. Do you know if any of the other states have tried to adopt a legislation like this?
As a matter of fact, I do. I know that Virginia adopted a version of Loren's law. I believe it was SI 1116, I believe, in 2017. They adopted a version of Loren's law, because I personally spoke with Senator Jeremy McPike in Virginia, who reached out to me, and I was able to work with him and legislation. And he also worked with Senator Jocelyn Pena-Melnick in order to be able to get, the verbiage and the language that was utilized with regards to it. So yes, Virginia adopted a version of it, and there have been other states that have reached out to me. I know New Jersey and Pennsylvania have reached out to me with regards to adopting a version of Loren's Law because of the fact that, you know, there, it's just, you know, this is something that's happening, you know, internationally. It's not just in the United States, however, you know, but Maryland then became the 23rd state, because there aren't a lot of states in the United States that actually truly recognize, you know, the importance of a child's voice. And beyond the fact of, and yes, it is very horrific, you know, child pornography and things like that, but that's pretty much, you know, the pinnacle of, you know, what matters with our kids. We don't want our kids to be caught in child pornography or to be a victim of child pornography. But what, right, exactly, you know, but there are
target.
Exactly. You know, there are many things that our kids are going through, you know,
Right.
you know, kids are suffering, you know, when their parents are deployed, and Lord forbid that, you know, you have a child or children who both parents could possibly be deployed, and then, you know, kids are acting out, and, you know, they're becoming angry, you know, it's just, they're, you know, we were all teenagers at one point, you know, we do remember how confusing it is to be a teenager. You're about to, you know, you're creeping up to 18 years old, where, you know, you have certain parents that are going, oh, I can't wait till you graduate from high school so you can get out of my house. And, you know, or the opposite, you know, if you live under my house, you know, until you're 18 years old, you're mine and you will do as I say. There's so many things that these kids are going through. And sometimes, you know, not every parent, but even saying things in the nicest way, our kids, you know, they're just, everything is just, it just seems like the world is coming down more on them. And, you know, the one important thing that I want to say is this: a lot of people are blaming social media. You know, a lot of people are saying Instagram is the reason, Facebook is the reason, Twitter is the reason. And do you know what? To a point, yes, to a point, you know, not every parent is truly monitoring their youth, their teenagers, when it comes to, you know, social media and social media accounts, and they're not really paying attention to how, you know, their kids, you know, may be acting. You know, they don't know if their child is a part of a clique, you know, and being a part of a clique, you know, you kind of become a little bit mean, where you alienate others. And, you know, there's so much that's going on. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I don't want people to concentrate on the fact that social media is what's, you know, creating all the suicidal ideations or thoughts in our children. Because since I have lost Loren in 2013, there have been multiple children between the ages of 5 and 9 years old that have died by suicide. So it's not, they're at 5 years old, they don't have an Instagram account, they don't have Facebook, they don't have Twitter, you know. So if you have children that are 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 years old that are dying by suicide, then there, you know, that's when we really as adults need to kind of look at the bigger picture and look at what's going on. But, you know, what also is the unfortunate downfall of losing a loved one to suicide is the stigma, because no one's going to be as truthful with regards to losing a loved one to suicide. And usually anyone asks me a question and I'm as honest as I can be, unless it's a very triggering question and it's very difficult for me to actually answer because of the fact that it's you know, it just pulls up so much grief for me. But I'm as honest as I can be. I am as you know, I will answer any question that comes before me, because I don't have time to be ashamed of how my daughter died, because I'm not going to disrespect my daughter and my love and her life by putting aside the fact that she died by suicide. She made a permanent decision to a very temporary problem. And that's the issue that I'm trying to make is, you know, I don't know if I would have known, if I would have been more educated, if I wasn't as ignorant as I was in mental health, and I didn't think that love alone and being a devoting parent would have kept my daughter from suicide, if I would have been more educated. Do I think I could have saved her? I don't know. Maybe I could have prolonged it. You know, I have a very good friend who, you know, she just lost her son in July. He was turned 20 years old in June. And we've been fighting with him. We've been fighting to help him. You know, he was in therapy. He, at 15 years old, he started to show the signs. And, you know, in the last 3 years, between therapy and group sessions and everything, no matter what we did, the depression has set so deep in him before we were able to actually find to see the symptoms and start getting him the help. And we ended up still losing him. So my best friend just lost her son to suicide, her youngest son to suicide. You know, so I always say this, if I would have known, if I, you know, could I have been able to help my own daughter? I don't know. Maybe I would have ended up having her here longer, you know, maybe I could have saved her, but I'm not going to do the, you know, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is share my story, you know, spread as much awareness as I can, you know, make it known that our children need a platform. They need a safe place. They need an open dialogue with, you know, with their loved ones, with their family. Put aside the criticism, put aside the joking and everything like that, and allow these children to be able to share what it is that they're going through. A lot of them at 12 and 13 years old, they can't really formulate the words. They don't really understand what they're going through, you know, but we need to at least give them, you know, the foundation to be able to sit here and say, let me know. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to listen, and I won't say anything until you tell me that it's okay for me to ask questions.
The resources and the opportunities, because they don't know that it's out there. You know, same with adults. Like, we have resources and opportunities out there, but what about the kids? You know, and
that is
so
true.
Make a point about staying silent. Like, if you're going to stay silent, it's not going to help anybody. What's the best prevention is education, is letting people know, getting your story out. If one mother is just going to be sad, which is fine, you know, people grieve differently, but it's going to be sad. And then, but don't speak about it. People are going to internalize, and it snowball effects, like what you were saying, everything snowballs.
Oh, yeah.
Something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really does. You know, I mean, even kids with, you know, friends, it's important to have like youth to youth or peer support, because, you know, sometimes friends may open up and say, okay, you know what, this is what I was going through, and I feel like this is how I'm feeling. And then the next thing you know, that friend that, you know, that they just opened up to, you know, they go to a group of other kids and they go, did you hear what Linda was going through? And they kind of take that, and, you know, so, I mean, you know, there's, we're all going through things. Adults are all, you know, we are constantly going through things. Change is inevitable. The one constant in life is always change, you know, and no two people, no two children are going to go through the exact same thing. And the only way that we can truly create a better tomorrow is, you know, to make sure that we deal with today. And the only way that we can do that is we need to help our children to live their best life. We as an adult want to live our best life. Well, guess what? Children did not ask to be brought into this world. If you don't intend on truly nurturing and guiding your child to be the best member of society that they can be, to make a community better, to be a positive person, to pay that forward. If that's not what you are planning to do, please don't bring a child into this world. If a child, you know, if we cannot give that to our children, then, you know, all we're doing is we are creating the cycle of dysfunction, and that cycle of dysfunction is going to continue unless we stop and we make that change. So like change is inevitable. Not everything is always going to be for the bad. We can make it for the better.
Listen, I'm dying to say this. My biggest pet peeve, number one pet peeve, is hearing people say that children are resilient. That's my number one pet peeve, because that's an adult's way of belittling and putting away a child's opinion, feelings, emotion, like everything, because the only reason that they get through that stuff is because they have no choice and they have no voice, like what we're talking about. They are not allowed to speak up and say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to move here. I don't want to go to this school. I don't want to, like, whatever. And if they do, a lot of times we quiet them. And I say we, because, you know, I mean, I parent my, like, I do my best to listen to them, but at the end of the day, like, I'm the mom, and some things, you know, you have to enforce, right? But I cannot stand it when people say that children are resilient, because for the children that grow up and go on through life, they all have issues. We all have issues as adults that stem from when we were children, either things that we went through, things that were said to us, things that we saw. And, you know, we can have the most loving parents. Like, Linda, I know you are an amazing mother. I know that. But that, like, so you can't control how your child, just like how, you know, some veterans with PTSD end up committing suicide, some don't. Like, it's, you know, I don't know what it is, like a chemical in the brain or something like that, you know, but you can't control that. But by hushing children and not allowing them to speak, like, it was disgusting me while you're talking about the schools telling you, like, oh, it's fine. Well, I'm not worried about that. Like, of course you're not, because you think children are resilient and they just need to be quiet in a corner. And that's what is causing, like, not only all these problems that kids are having, but then it grows with you. It doesn't go away when you become an adult. It just gets buried inside, and then you have to figure out what in the hell is wrong with you, and you don't know because something happened to you 30 years ago and you're not making the connection. And so, I mean, it drives me bananas that there are so many people in this world that feel that way and will hush the children up. I mean, it's so disgusting, but because of that, because I'm so passionate about it, like, I applaud you so much for everything that you went through to get this passed. And it's incredible what you've done. I mean, it's, you know, we definitely need to get the word out about this more and more. I mean, children are my passion, like taking care of them, because they become adults, and we need a good world. We need a positive world, and we need people that are heard, you know, so that they don't feel like they just need to be quiet in a corner. I mean, it causes relationship issues, it causes work issues, it causes all kinds of stuff. So sorry, I had to say my piece, because I'm like,
we've only scratched the surface of what Linda has done. She's only talked about passing the legislation. She hasn't talked about her nonprofit, the Lauren's Law nonprofit, and all of that. She's helped like hundreds, thousands of children. Right, Linda?
Yes.
So many. Like, we've only scratched the surface. But one thing that I remember talking with Linda, and she kind of mentioned it also, is that military people, right? When we're military, we're taught to be resilient. We're taught, okay, this will pass. Okay, let's suck it up. You know, whatever, just get through it, right? And so as parents who are veterans, or as parents who are also in the military, you cannot tell your children to suck it up. You can't, you know what I mean? So you have to be aware, more vigilant than that.
Oh, yeah.
And that also goes without saying with, you know, your soldier, your sailor, your airman, your Marine, your coastie, your Space Force person, whoever, right? Your military person. So that goes without saying, you know, you got to be aware of the signs. So
Yeah.
just as children need to find their voice, veterans, military people, they need to find their voice. You know, advocate.
They do. They do. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, you know, I don't even think I made it out of basic training when we lost somebody in the latrine who took their firearm, you know,
Hitting.
with them. No. Yeah. And so, and of course, I'm sure that, I mean, when I went in, it was like 1986. So, you know, you're talking years ago. And I mean, it's crazy. We had a woman who was, you know how drill sergeants are when you're in basic training and they're like, oh, your recruiter lied to you. You're never going to see your son again. One swallowed Clorox. You know, the things that we go through in the military, you know, we make it through boot camp, and then the next, you know, we get to our, you know, duty stations, and then every duty station is going to be different, and, you know, everyone's going to be walking around. And I know when I was the third female heavy wheel vehicle mechanic that was trained in 1987. I mean, it was, you know, I probably sat in a reception for like a month because nobody wanted a female mechanic in the motor pool. So it was very difficult. But I always tell people that the military, they didn't compare to my biological mother. And so I was just like, I can make it through her. I can make it through the military.
Yep.
So
like, that's all you got.
right, you know, like you yelling. I'm sorry, my mother. My mother is much better than you are. So, but no, I mean, yeah. Thank you, Leah, for bringing up that every child is resilient. We heard that as not every child is resilient, but it's changed. That's the updated version, because when I grew up, it was children should be seen and not heard. You know, so then so now it's upgraded to children are resilient. Don't worry about them. They bounce back like rubber bands. No, they don't. Not all children, you know, because, and you're right. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. You know, some of it can be hereditary. You know, a lot of us are born, you know, with regards to, I mean, I actually think that I have a chemical imbalance in the brain because I believe my biological father was an alcoholic. Never met the man though. You know, my mom, you know, did whatever with smoking and drinking and things like that. But I'm allergic to everything. I can't drink, I can't smoke, I can't do anything, you know. So, I mean, hey, thank God for the military and my words, because I have some colorful words in my dictionary. So that's like my bad habit, you know, it's my colorful words, you know. But realistically speaking, you know, when we
love how you say it like that, Linda. Like you can't even say it like cuss words. You make it sound nice.
I do, yes, because it's very colorful. You know, I got really good at that, girl. I can actually split probably, you know, an entire sentence with 5 words, and it'd be all wonderful. But
do it, bring it on. We're okay.
But it was crazy though, because you know, with you know, with my kids, you know, they would always say, Mom, you know, you need to stop cussing so much. And I'd be like, yeah, but a lot of those are words of endearment, you know, hey, come here, little shit, come here, you know, but it's just, yeah, it's like there's you know, words of endearment, but you know, but yeah, in the military and all of the things that we go through, you know, a lot of drinking, a lot of everything, and the next thing you know, you know, one of the important things that I realized was, even though I did not drink, I did not smoke, of course, it was something that was hereditary. My daughter's father, being a heroin addict, of course, she had a chemical imbalance in her brain. And I always found it strange that Loren was 6 weeks old and she's bleeding out of her nose. And I was like, how does a 6-week-old bleed out of her nose? And my doctor told me, I had to switch doctors at that time. And he was like, you must have imagined it, because 6-week-old children don't bleed out of their noses. And I was like, whatever, okay. And, you know, she also had a heart murmur. And she compared herself a lot with my older daughter because, you know, since I had, you know, 2 children with 2 different fathers, my oldest, you know, we kind of dubbed her Wolverine, you know, because she didn't even catch a common cold, nothing, no glasses, braces, or anything. But Loren had to wear glasses. Loren had, you know, had to have braces at 6 years old. She had extreme psoriasis, eczema, extreme allergies where she had to get injections. Loren just had so much that was going on medically and physically also on top of everything else. So, you know, we also have to make sure that we understand that when we choose to bring a child into this life, we also should make sure that, you know, I don't mean go and do DNA tests and all this and all that, but at the same time, you know, we do have to make sure that we understand that the DNA can also, you know, create, you know, a certain issues with regards to, you know, the chemical imbalances in our children's brains. That's the reason why I want to sit here and say that such young children at 5 years old are dying. They're not attempting suicide. They're dying by suicide. And to me, it breaks my heart that 5-year-olds are even that young. How do you even think I want to die at 5 years old? You know, but yeah, but just to let you know, I was a disciplinarian with my kids. And if you were to speak to my oldest daughter today, she will tell you that I never once told them that they had to be quiet. I never thought of them as being resilient, and I didn't treat them like children should be heard, seen and not heard. What I did do is I lectured my kids for like hours if they did something wrong, to the point where they didn't want to do it anymore. So that's a good tool for a disciplinary, if you know, for discipline, if you haven't used that yet with your children.
Well, that's a form of communication. And I think that's what's most important. Like, parenting is hard as hell. It's so hard. And I think, you know, like we want to be better than our parents, especially those of us that did not have a good childhood, which I feel like is majority
of us
in the military, at least, didn't have a great childhood. And you want to be better, but it's like you don't really know how. Like, you know, some things. I mean, I bawled with my first kid when I found out she was a girl, not because I like was disappointed that she was a girl, but I was so afraid of messing her up mentally that I was terrified. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, you know, I was just terrified. I mean, obviously she's a huge, you know, God knows what he's doing, and I have 2 girls and 1 boy, but, you know, I was happy to have a healthy baby, but I was just like, oh my God, no, I'm going to mess her up. I'm going to like ruin her life, you know, accidentally, you know, like not intentionally, accidentally, you know?
Yeah, not, you don't want to, I mean, you can tell I think so highly of my biological mother, that, you know, I didn't,
all 3 of us.
right? You know, it's like, I didn't, you know, Puerto Rican from New York. So it's like, hey, but it's like, I kind of thought, you know what, I didn't want to bring kids into this world because, you know, my grandmother and, you know, and my mother had this horrific relationship. And then, you know, I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I don't want, you know, to have a child who's going to hate me. And, you know, it's right. I mean, it's like, you know, Loren, you know, both of my daughters tell me how much, you know, they love me. I mean, I have a my only grandchild, evidently I was lucky to be getting that one, but my grandchild will be 13 in January. And my oldest daughter, I get tickled sometimes because I listen to how she's repeating everything that I was doing with her with regards to lecturing my granddaughter. And, oh my gosh, and I'm so tickled because I'm like, she's giving you more problems than you even gave me. So I'm like, what are you doing? So, but it's not that bad because my daughters, neither one of them, the worst problem Loren ever gave me was that she left me. She left me here to live without her, and she left me with the pain of living without her. But she also left me with so much love. There wasn't one day that Loren never said I love you. It was something in our household. We never went to bed at night without saying I love you. We had dinner, every evening together. I had activities planned with my girls every weekend just to make sure that we did different things. Loren was so filled with love, and she and my oldest daughter were like two peas in a pod. And I raised my girls with love. I wasn't raised with love, but I made sure that my kids were raised with love, with discipline, with communication. And my oldest daughter and I still, we constantly, communicate. And she does the exact same thing with my granddaughter. My granddaughter at 7 years old was starting an anti-bullying club in school because she was witnessing all of the bullying and things like that were getting done. So I believe that love and kindness pretty much rules over everything. And that's pretty much how I've always, lived my life. I like being positive and I like being kind. And like I said, I use colorful words, even in a good way, because you know what? They just, that's what spices up my life, since I can't,
Nothing amorous on the point, but
it's like I can't have a drink, I can't sit back and be like, what? Let's have a glass of wine. Or be like, no. So I just, I shoot around love, terms of endearment.
So what happens if you do drink? I'm just curious.
Oh, I have an allergic reaction to different things. So, champagne, you might as well just, crush up glass and stuff it in my eyes.
Oh my God.
Yes, it's that bad. Like wines, I guess the fermentation process, wines, I seem to have an extreme allergic reaction. So I will break out in like hives, like all over my face and in my mouth, and then my throat will start to close up. Beer, hops, and all of that. I break out in hives all over my body. I mean, don't even get me started on whiskey. Oh, and smoking cigarettes, marijuana. Just to smell it makes me want to regurgitate. So I'll just project out like everywhere. So I'm just like, are you serious? My parents partied, and I have one brother and one biological brother with the same mother and father. Oh my God, he can, he drinks everyone under the water. Like he can go through two 12 packs of beer and rum and everything and be sober. He's a happy drunk, and I'm just like, I can't even drink.
So what do you do? What do you do for stress relief?
Oh, I ride motorcycles. I like to sketch, so I like to write. I love to read. I love paranormal romance, so it's like, the fae and so on and so forth. Paranormal fays and vampires and wolves and stuff like that. So, yes.
I was thinking like an alive person and a ghost like falling. Like what?
I love to work out. My other half is a cop and a Krav Maga instructor. So we work out, or I fight him, and he's like 6'2", so I can use him for great target practice. Or hang out with my kids. I do many different things for self-care. It's just preserving myself and my energy. And, I don't sleep normally. Before Loren passed away, I never had a normal, like I said, I didn't have the greatest childhood. I think I've always slept about 4 or 5 hours a day. Hence the reason why I was I had KP duty, I think it was 4 times in basic training. That's how well I was loved, that I gave me KP duty 4 times. But yeah, they couldn't.
They don't even get that anymore. They don't even have to do that anymore.
What? Are you serious?
My husband never had to do KP. I was like,
so what is KP for y'all? What is that?
kitchen police.
Yes. Sit there and work in the kitchen, whatever. They used to always give me the shittiest things to do, like peel the potatoes by hand.
But they also made us do stand watches around the clock. And so
yeah.
it would have to be up like, about 4 or whatever odd time. So they taught you not to sleep right away in boot camp. Like,
my God, when I first got there, the only thing I ever said was, yo, drill sergeant, drill sergeant. And they were like,
you get beat, you got smoked.
Right. The very first time they said, beat your face, I was like, why would I want to do that?
Oh, we actually had a smart aleck do this once. We were like, yeah,
it was. I'm not kidding you. It was hilarious. I mean, I love basic training. Everyone who looks at me, they're like, you are not normal.
Well, so how many women were in your basic training? Do you remember?
It was all females.
Okay.
So we didn't have like what they do now, which is they have co-ed,
Mm-hmm.
right? All females. I believe when we first started, there was 120 females just in, like our barracks. By the time, I think when we graduated, it was probably less than 50 or so that graduated. Slowly but surely, it was like everyone was kind of leaving, so they were, getting articled out at general discharge and so on and so forth because they just couldn't cope. But me, myself, I was doing good. I was like,
And how many years did you do in the Army?
8. I did 7 1 year inactive reserve. So 8 inactive. And that's because I got tired. After my second time of being demoted, I was just like, are you serious? Here I go.
Story in itself. We're going to have you come on a second show.
Yeah, we need to hear the story, Linda. I need to hear that story.
Leah needs to hear that story.
Oh my God, yeah. I love talking about all my military time and all the wonderful things that I did and did not do.
So we'll probably schedule you again in the future to talk about just that, the military time.
Oh yes, we could definitely do that.
We need to share some Army stories.
You were in like the late 80s and then through like the early 90s and then mid 90s. So I'm pretty sure you went through a lot. And well, actually, I know because you told me on the phone. So,
yeah. It was definitely a lot, and I wouldn't change it.
Yeah. Where did you go? Where did you go?
For I was getting ready to say Fort Lost in the Woods, Jackson.
Oh, you went to Jackson? Okay.
Yep. But then I went to AIT in Fort Lost in the Woods. Yeah, it took me a long time to stop saying Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri.
Yeah.
And to finally started saying it right.
I did basic and AIT there. So
where, Fort Lost in the Woods?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I started off as a truck driver. So yep.
Oh, get out.
Mm-hmm.
I started out as a heavy wheel vehicle mechanic, so 68 Bravo. Mm-hmm. And of course, they really didn't like any females in we didn't have, let me tell you, in AIT, there were 3 females, and we were literally, and not all of us graduated. I graduated, but they put our room in the barracks right next to the instructors' rooms, the office, because we had no place. They didn't, of course, they weren't going to put us on the floor. It's like Fort Lost in the Woods back then was like, I think the ratio of men to women was like 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they didn't trust us being on the middle. We weren't really able to go anywhere without basically an escort.
Yeah. See, the drill sergeants in AIT were worse than any of the soldiers that we dealt with in AIT. But in basic, it was a different story because we had all infantry drill sergeants, and they were like, "We don't like you. You're going to not pass." And we're like, okay.
Oh my God.
Find a husband. Like
they would remember I kept saying, all I kept saying was yo. It got so bad that they finally stopped trying to make me stop saying yo, and they'd all just pull out their, you owe me 200 push-ups. So they just started taking like notes and tallies of how many push-ups I owed them. So it was like, yeah, whenever you see me, you just beat your face and give me a count, and I'll just remove it and update it. And it was just like, it didn't make any sense. I was like,
you had a running tab.
I did. I was running tabs. It was like,
why yo?
And then it got to a point that I was doing push-ups so well that, it was just like, forget about it. Then they started having me, the cruelest thing they could have done to me was they had me write 1,000 times. They gave me a pen and paper and made me write 1,000 times. They were like, Rico, go and get, Drill Sergeant Gauthier and Drill Sergeant Jenkins. And I was like, yo, Drill Sergeant Gauthier and Jenkins, Drill Sergeant Green wants you. And they made me write 1,000 times. I will never say Drill Sergeant Gauthier and Jenkins again. I was like, but Drill Sergeant Green said Drill Sergeant Gauthier and Jenkins. You're not Drill Sergeant Green, are you? So I had to make sure that every time I was sent, and they do it on purpose, they would send me to go and get 2 drill sergeants. They'd repeat it, and I had to go Drill Sergeant and Drill Sergeant. So I had to repeat the drill sergeant. So they would always test me. I was breaking all kinds of, I was told by the battalion commander when we graduated, they were like, yeah, if I never see you again, it'll be too soon. I thought I was a good soldier. So it was definitely fun. When did you ladies go to training? What year?
2001.
I was
2001?
Yeah, 2003, 2004.
I was supposed to ship out September 12th, 2001. And my date got moved a few days.
Yeah.
So I got there the
16th. I can only imagine. Yeah, my grandmother was actually found the day the World Trade Centers fell. She ended up in the hospital, and she died 2 weeks later.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Was she part of that? Was she like in the rough?
She lived in New York, and she was walking around.
Wow, that's terrible.
So she was she was 70, she would have been 75. She died right before her 75th birthday.
Wow.
So, but yeah, but it's she lived a good life. I mean, she had 18 kids. If that says anything. I know, right?
That's a lot of kids.
A lot of kids. That's a lot.
Back then we didn't really have like birth control and stuff like that for us.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, a lot of them unfortunately died, gang violence, drugs, AIDS.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Linda, do you have any advice for parents and for military parents as well, like or give us some signs to look out for, or any last words for us?
Oh, absolutely. First, I want to say this, for parents, if you have, children, if you think that your children could possibly be going through something, and even if you open up a dialogue with them and you tell them that they have the floor, that you promise to be there, you promise to listen to them, you promise not to interrupt them and make them feel bad in any which way if they don't open up to you. They should have, at least if they don't have a school resource that they could go to, then the one thing I will say that absolutely works, almost every child has a cell phone or has access to a tablet of some sort. They can text the crisis text line at 741-741. It's free. I've been on camera in the middle of a live news interview and had a reporter physically text 741-741 and say help. And within 30 seconds, they received a response back. So, if a child has a social media account, they can even, send a message, to crisis text line. And of course, it's going to show up crisis text line so they can message them. But, to text, sometimes it's a lot better to be able to text what could possibly be happening with our kids, with our youth. So texting 741-741, they can text home, they can text help, but no matter what they do, they could tell them go to hell, just text 741-741 and somebody will immediately reach out to them. They are monitored with amazing counselors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. They never close their doors to anyone. That can also go for adults, that can also go for our veterans. Our veterans most likely don't want to physically talk to somebody. We know as veterans what our loved ones are, what they go through, and silence is something like that they end up wanting to do, but they can do the exact same thing. And they can text, even if they don't want to talk, they can text. Someone is on that other line 24 hours a day, always reaching out. Some of the signs, when it comes to our kids, loss of appetite, or increase of appetite. If you see, your child's appetite go one way or the other, if they stop eating or if they start to eat a lot and you notice that it's out of their normal character, if you see that they're agitated, if you see that they become fidgety, if, like Loren was a serious sneakerhead and she had an Air Jordan collection. So she was very meticulous with her shoes. She didn't like to walk in the rain with her good shoes and things like that. She would always have them in a box. If they start to not take care of themselves, if you see that your child loves to, get their hair done or do their hair or dress, nice, and then all of a sudden they decide that they want to change how they dress, not necessarily, I don't want to say gothic, with dark makeup or anything like that. No, if you have a child that loves to wear dresses and jeans and all of a sudden they don't want to come out of sweatpants and sweatsuits and things like that. If they're snapping at you, and these are the same things that can kind of happen with adults. If you have someone that all of a sudden starts snapping at you when you know that they're really loving and caring, so personality change, someone who's hopeless, you will hear this a lot in children. Well, I'm having this problem with my teacher, and a parent may say, well, why don't you go ahead and try and talk to them? And the next thing you know is everything is hopeless. Well, I don't know. I don't feel like it anymore. I mean, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, it doesn't matter. It's never going to change. You'll hear that also when it comes to them, if parents, the home is suffering a divorce and parents are separating and things like that. the kids all of a sudden, I don't care, it doesn't matter, it's, it's not like my life matters to you anyway, or anything like that. I mean, it's just these drastic, personality changes. And, when I say agitation from your loved one, not, they snap at you and then they automatically turn around and go, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. It's the extreme change. You just have that person, that loved one, that child has gone from absolutely 100% loving to, well, I don't want anything to do with you, get away
Like
from
a
me.
drastic, like 180, like
Exactly. I mean, you look out for anything, and it could be, and when I tell you, it could be anything. They could be getting bullied in school. Kids can be getting bullied in school, and they won't come home and say anything to you. Sometimes, if you're, such a disciplinary at home, something could happen and school, they don't want to come and tell you because they think that they're going to get in trouble, and so it's and I did that a lot with my girls. It's like, always tell me what's going on, keep it 100 with me, because I can't defend you if I don't know what's going on. And Lord knows, my oldest, if she ever had an issue, she'd call me before she even left school and told me what happened before the teacher would even call me and tell me what happened. I always got the exact same story. So it always, it works out having, giving that child an opportunity to have that open dialogue so that they can be honest with you about everything. So those are the major signs: agitation, withdrawn, they don't want to do anything, they don't want to go to the movies, they don't want to hang out with their friends. If it's an adult friend, they don't want to be around you. If you're used to being on the phone, you're finding that your friends are kind of hanging up with you, sooner than what you're used to, or they're very abrupt with you and things like that. So withdraw, the hopelessness, the agitation, the personality change, the change in hygiene and how they take care of their self-care. Like they're not taking care of themselves anymore.
On your website, lorenslaw.org, they can find resources on there as well, right? So you direct 74741, and then on your nonprofit is .org, and then also contact information to get a hold of different resources, right?
Yes. I have a resources page where you can find a therapist, you can find and it doesn't matter what state you're in. I have the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, which has a location for every state so that you can find all types of therapists. So I have excellent resources, and these are resources that I myself utilize, I defer, and I provide to everyone. So, and these organizations, the organizations that are listed as far as resources, they really do work with everyone.
And by everyone, you're saying kids, adults, veterans, like anybody can reach out to this number, the Instagram.
Absolutely. Yep. Everyone can reach out to them. It's amazing what, especially the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. They are amazing when it comes to a lot of programs in support of youth awareness. So that's exceptional for all adults. And then you have Psychology Today, where you can actually look up all therapists. It doesn't matter what kind of therapist, social therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, all types of clinicians in your area, all the way down to the city that you could possibly be located in. It also provides you SAMHSAs on there also, where they can even provide the outpatient therapy, outpatient clinics and things like that. Who accepts what insurance? Do you have insurance? All of these different things are on my resources page, which is what a lot of people don't get an answer to. They don't know if they have insurance. Can they even reach out to an organization?
Valuable information in there for everybody, for sure. I want to say thank you so much for coming on our shorter podcast, sharing your story. And you've been through so much. You are so strong and you are resilient, but you are still living every day, still fighting for Loren. Living through Loren.
I'm fighting for all children.
Yes, and you're fighting for all children, and your strength is just so amazing and so inspiring. And so I just want to thank you for giving us your time.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you so much,
so
Linda.
much for having me.
Yeah.
And we gotta have a part 2.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we will.
We'll definitely
Sure.
schedule that in. And I want to say that for our listeners and viewers, go ahead and check out lorenslaw.org. You'll find Linda's website on there, their mission and everything that's happening. If you don't have a law like that in your state, go ahead and check out the resources and maybe you might be able to advocate for them. Check out our webpage, VeteranTrashTalk.com. Check us out on Facebook. VTT Official is a Facebook group. Veteran Trash Talk is a business page, and ours, mine and Leah's page is VTT Throat Punch Mondays. And that's all I have to say. Leah, go ahead and close us out.
Oh, doggone it. I don't have our catch line here. Hey,
Prevention is number one. So I wanted to say that, so I'm so happy that we had you on here, Linda. And
yeah, just ladies, remember that you're important and we are your voice. I don't know our tagline offhand that Len wrote for us.
So
usually I have the notes ready, but I don't.
So ladies, you are the 10% of the 10%. Don't let anybody tell you just because you're a woman that your service didn't mean anything. We are your voice and you will be heard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
love it.
All right, guys. So until next time, thanks so much for tuning in.